Have you ever played back a clip of a video or heard a recording of your voice and thought, oh my gosh, is that what I really sound like? Ugh, same here, folks. And I'm here to tell you and help you reframe that from sounding weird or doing it wrong to just new data as a part of your YouTube channel adventures. So we'll remember that in episode 1 here of this mini series that we're doing, we talked about not getting our videos started because of the way we look. Well, sound can be a part of that, how you're being presented on screen. And it was certainly something that I found for myself when I did those first recordings in my 30-day challenge, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I was just playing it back on my phone and it didn't sound too bad. I wasn't cringing. But when I put those on other televisions or other players around the house, I did. I was surprised by what I sounded like nasal and screechy at some places. And honestly, it's just part of the physics, really. So I did a little bit of investigation into this because I was like, how do I sound so different to myself in my head to what I'm hearing on the video? And it's physiological. So when you're talking in your head, apparently you have your bone density that it kind of rounds off the sound and it kind of adds some bass. So you sound like a richer, fuller tone. But when you hear it playing outside of your head, so when you would hear it like on when you're watching your video, you have the air conduction, and that's like what the mic records. It's kind of thinner and higher. And your playback is only going to include that piece. So that's why it sounds so wrong to us. The good news is it's not wrong. It's just how it sounds. The bad news for me is realizing this is what you've always sounded like to everybody in your life when you've talked. So that's one thing to remember. Um, the other thing about this is just to remember it's always a shock when this happens. So when you first record your video, expect this. Expect to not like the way you look and not like the way you sound and expect that to be okay. Don't let that be a reason that you're not going to start. So, I also want to talk about playing with the idea of adding like a 10% energy shift to your voice. And so, what does that mean? That just means adding like a little bit of frisson and um, liveliness to your voice as you're playing. It's not louder, it's just slightly more present and engaged. And it adds kind of a warmth and clarity without faking it. So you want to make sure it's still your voice, but you want to just add a lift to it. Think about the people that you watch like an expert or somebody you're watching on YouTube. And if they kind of have a flat monotone and they're just telling you something, you're you're a little bit unsure. You might be confused. Is this person an expert or is this somebody, is something wrong with your microphone? And again, this it just instills a bit of confidence in your viewer that hey, not only are they, getting in front of the camera, but they sound like they know what they're talking about. And that's helpful. Um Again, you want this to be intentional and a light tone, and you don't wanna try to perform your voice. I mean, like I was saying, when I first heard myself and thought I sounded thin and nasally, I then spent a little time trying to decide if I could make it more bass and sound a little bit more, uh, serious, but it just isn't me, and it sounded like, forced. So, don't make the mistake of doing that either. Um the other thing is you want to improve by practice. So there's probably some voice stretches and breathing exercises you can try out there. And really, what I have found that worked best for me, and again, I shared that I did a 30-day challenge where I practiced videoing myself for 30 days before I ever put a video up on YouTube. And again, this isn't something I've shared up on YouTube. I may share one throughout this series just to provide an example. But by the end of it, not only was I more comfortable with the way I looked, but I was also more comfortable with the way I sounded. I still didn't love my voice, but I was at least used to it and not so hard on myself. I really tried to remember that the reason I'm doing this is because I want to share some of my knowledge and expertise with people. And when they're getting the message, hopefully they're not tuning into what I sound like, but rather what I'm saying and the content providing. That's not to say if you love or hate my voice, that's not an opinion. That's an opinion you're certainly welcome to have. And I can imagine there being, people out there whose voices that would, irk me so much, maybe I wouldn't want to tune in. Hopefully, I'm not one of those for you, but if it is, well, I can't help that. This is me. So, again, you might try what recording yourself too with just a slightly different pace, a slightly different face, try it in different places in your home. Some basic tricks is to have some soft furnishings. That's one of the ones I'm ignoring because everything around me is hard. That may be playing into my nasally sound, but I do have a rug on the floor. And so hopefully that's kind of absorbing the sound. I've heard some people sit in armchairs and that can help. And I will say for me personally, I actually found standing to be helpful. It made me feel a little bit more in command. Maybe it has something to do physically with how my diaphragm's lined up. I really don't know. I just found that I was more confident, and I think that came across in my voice. Again, I just want to offer to you to do some practice before you upload your videos to try to get get normalizing the idea that this is what you sound like and this is what you look like. And your voice isn't broken. You're just hearing it kind of differently. And not to try to do some fancy modulation or change it because honestly you're going to find that distracting and it will distract from the message you're trying to share. I will say that for me, it was just the daily repetition. So that 30-day challenge really helped me feel confident with all those things. And again, kind of helped me realize like, hey, that's what you sound like, Aaron, and you're showing up, and that's the most important piece. So if you're finding these little mini series and mini videos helpful for getting you committed and on the other side of the screen, as I like to say, be sure to like and subscribe and check out the other videos of these series. I'll see you in the next one where I think we're going to talk about what am I going to talk about on these videos. I've got some tips for that as well. Thanks. See you next time.